because President Trump is escalating his rhetoric ahead of the midterm elections. The president yesterday called for Republicans to take over elections while ranting about his 2020 loss to Joe Biden. Trump made the comments during an interview with right-wing podcaster, also former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino.
These people were brought to our country to vote, and they vote illegally. And amazing that the Republicans aren't tougher on it. The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. And we have states that are so crooked, and they're counting votes. We have states that I won that show I didn't win. Now you're going to see something in Georgia where they were able to get, with a court order, the ballots. You're going to see some interesting things come out. But, like the 2020 election, I won that election by so much. Everybody does it.
The president, of course, has no constitutional power on the issue of elections. Here's what the Washington Post points out. Under the Constitution, the times, places, and manner of holding elections are determined by each state, not the federal government. Congress has only the power to set election rules. All these comments come as officials in Fulton County, Georgia, confirm they will challenge the FBI's seizure of 2020 election documents in court. The Fulton County commissioner said yesterday the county will argue the search warrant used to justify last week's raid of their election facility went beyond the scope of what federal law enforcement was legally allowed to do. The commissioner argued that while the FBI was authorized to copy records under a separate court order, agents instead took the original copies, including in-person, absentee, and provisional ballots. Last Wednesday, a team of FBI investigators swarmed the Fulton County elections facility near Atlanta. Officials took 700 boxes of ballots and voter information related to the 2020 presidential election. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard was among them, on site during the search, and has been leading the White House's ongoing investigation into the 2020 race that Trump continues to falsely label as fraudulent. Nope, he just lost it. Meanwhile, we're learning more this morning about President Trump's actions directly after that FBI raid. The New York Times reports the day after the search of the Fulton County elections facility, DNI Gabbard facilitated a call between the president and the FBI team working on this investigation. That reporting is according to 3 people with knowledge of the meeting. The Times writes, quote, the president addressed the agents on speakerphone, asking them questions as well as praising and thanking them for their work on this inquiry. In a letter to lawmakers who were pressing for more details, Gabbard denied that Trump asked questions or issued directives during the call. The paper also pointed to the unprecedented nature of the meeting. Rather than going to senior department or FBI officials, Trump spoke directly to the frontline agents doing the granular work of a politically sensitive investigation in which he has a large personal stake. A White House spokesperson defended the president's Georgia investigation as a whole, saying President Trump pledged to secure America's elections. Both the DOJ and FBI declined to comment. It's a lot for us to get into with senior writer at The Dispatch, columnist at Bloomberg Opinion, David Drucker. I think, first of all, the fact that Trump is making this news on Dan Bongino's podcast. Bongino, of course, an election denier who then went in to be number 2 at the FBI. Don't you think if he, as number 2 at the FBI, found proof of election fraud or any of the other conspiracies that podcasters on the right pushed while they were not in the official side of government, don't you think that's what they would have led with? I mean, what is this that we're seeing now that Trump is saying things exist that clearly do not exist?
Is it too soon to use the Groundhog Day analogy?
No, you can use it. It's right.
It's Groundhog Day, Ali. Listen, the president is fixated on this. He will always be fixated on this. It's not even that he's fixated on 1 or 2 particular states where he thinks there were irregularities. He's convinced he won states he couldn't have won in a million years. In the same way, there are Democrats that couldn't, win Idaho, in a million years. And it's just never going to change. And I think that, the question is, number one, how's the public going to continue to react to this, especially when the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation has lost so much bipartisan credibility, right? I mean, 10, 20 years ago, you and I are having a conversation like this. We might be like, well, that politician's a little weird. But, the FBI and the DOJ, I mean, those are, top flight, reliable agencies. So let's just see what they find. Yep. And so now it's just going to be a partisan issue. And those agencies are responsible for that because they have lost so much credibility pushed by the president. I think, the other issue here getting back to the president's comments about seizing elections or overseeing elections. You know, he uses terminology that then Republicans will explain, no, he's just talking about passing legislation. And I'm waiting for that because I'm sure that is coming.
Yeah.
I think Democrats right now should actually breathe a sigh of relief that they never succeeded in carving out a filibuster exception for voting rights legislation, because it's something that Republicans would be using to pass all sorts of new regulations governing how our states and municipalities both administer elections and how people can vote in them. And one of the things that protects our system from overzealous politicians is the fact that they don't have control over it, and states get to make a lot of these decisions on their own. Counties within the states get to make even more decisions, and it's one of the things that has protected our elections. And as we've seen over the last year plus, the president can talk all he wants about doing this, and there are issues with that. But voter sentiment is reflected by the outcome of these contests, as we saw in Virginia and New Jersey and Georgia, and recently in a state Senate district in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I will also say there is conversation on Capitol Hill right now around one piece of voting-related legislation. It's sort of part and parcel to this shutdown conversation, and I'm not sure it's worth getting in the weeds on right now, but that's an active line of conversation on the Hill. The other thing, though, is when you look at the fact that, yes, they have lost bipartisan credibility at the FBI, at DOJ, here in Washington, and yet all of the Trump conspiracy theories around winning an election that he lost, he now has the actual levers of government to go in and try to investigate, taking the original voter files out of Fulton County. Sure, they're suing, but the cat's out of the bag on that one. And then the fact that you have the director of national intelligence seemingly inexplicably involved with all of this. I mean, how do you roll that back?
I don't know that you do.
Yeah.
Not for a long time, because it's going to take a successor to President Trump, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat or who knows, to say, we're not going to do it. And there is going to be a huge push. And this doesn't absolve Trump, and it doesn't make any of this okay. But you know how this works, Allie. We've covered both parties in Washington for a long time.
Yeah.
Usually, once the seal has been broken, the next person comes along and says, oh, yeah, I know I was against it, but thank you very much. I'll acquire that for myself. Somebody's going to have to come in, clean house, and say, we're just not going to do what, in theory, it's now okay to do. And there's going to be a lot of loud voices urging them not to say stop. And that's the only thing that will work. Either that, or there is a case that is so egregious, there is an issue that is so egregious that the American voters collectively say that it's wrong. The problem is that everybody gets their information in different places. Everybody believes what they want to believe. You can listen to Bongino's podcast. You can do whatever you want. And then all of a sudden, you don't even know all of the facts. You only know the facts that have been presented to you.
Yep. And
so we don't have that sort of collective view of the news, just with different biases and takes on it the way we did, in a previous generation. And that's part of the problem. Yeah,
that's definitely a huge part of the problem. I would argue that January 6th would have been that egregious line crossed, and yet here we are. I did think, and then we saw the election.